Commander Lee Minho rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the glowing screens in the Deep Space Communications Center. Equipment. Outside, the Korean countryside slept peacefully under a blanket of stars. Ever since his promotion to senior communications officer, most nights were boring, filled with routine checks of satellite feeds and maintenance reports. He liked it that way. The quiet gave him time to think, to study the endless streams of data flowing from humanity's listening posts scattered across the solar system. Tonight felt different, though. A strange tension hung in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Minho couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the main console erupted in a cascade of warning lights. Minho bolted upright, his coffee mug clattering to the floor. The deep space receiver was picking up something massive from the direction of Kepler 442, a star system over 1,000 light-years away. "What the hell?" Minho muttered, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he tried to isolate the signal. The transmission was unlike anything in their databases. It pulsed with a rhythmic pattern that seemed almost alive, like a heartbeat. Echoing across the void, Dr. Park So-young rushed over from the linguistics station, her lab coat still wrinkled from where she had been napping at her desk. "Minho, are you seeing this?" The translation matrix is going crazy. The two of them watched in amazement as the alien signal slowly resolved into something that made their blood run cold. Fragments of words appeared on the screen, translated by their most advanced linguistic algorithms. "Dying world," So-young read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "Help needed, time running short." Minho felt his heart hammering in his chest. First contact. After decades of searching the stars, listening for any sign of intelligent life, they had finally found it, and it was asking for help. The signal continued to pulse, each burst containing more fragments of the desperate message. Ancient systems failing, population declining. Respond with location. Aid required immediately. "This is it," Minho said, his voice shaking with excitement and fear. "This is what we've been waiting for. Real aliens, asking for our help." So-young was already reaching for the emergency protocols manual, but Minho grabbed her arm. "Wait, how long will it take to get approval from Sol Command?" "Standard procedure requires at least 6 hours of review, then another 4 for the International Committee to debate response options," she replied. "But Minho, we have to follow protocol. This is too important to look at the signal strength," Minho interrupted. "Whatever's happening to them, they don't have time. For our bureaucracy." The transmission was indeed growing weaker with each passing minute. Soon, it would fade below the threshold of detection, lost forever in the cosmic noise. Minho made a decision that would change the course of human history. "So-young, prepare a response beacon. Include our solar system coordinates and a message of aid." "That's completely against protocol," she protested. "We're not authorized to reveal Earth's location to alien species. They're dying out there, and we might be their only hope. I won't let bureaucracy condemn an entire civilization to extinction." With trembling hands, So-young began programming the response beacon. Within minutes, Earth's reply was ready to launch across the void of space. The message was simple but profound. "We hear your call for help. These are our coordinates. Earth stands ready to assist." Minho watched the transmission counter climb to 100%, then pressed the launch button. Somewhere in the depths of space, powerful transmitters hurled their message toward the Kepler 442 system at the speed of light. The alien signal cut to silence immediately after their response launched, leaving the communications center eerily quiet. Minho and So-young stared at each other, the magnitude of what they had just done beginning to sink in. "Did we do the right thing?" So-young asked quietly. Before Minho could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the facility. The deep space tracking stations had detected something impossible. Massive objects were accelerating toward Earth's solar system at speeds that defied known physics. The duty officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple large contacts approaching from the direction of Kepler 442. Estimated time to Earth orbit, 6 months." Minho stared at the approaching signatures on his screen, a cold realization settling in his stomach. In trying to save an alien civilization, had they doomed their own? The objects racing toward Earth were moving too fast to be natural phenomena. They were ships, and they were coming in response to humanity's offer of help. But as Minho watched the alien fleet's relentless approach, he couldn't help but wonder if they had completely misunderstood the original message. 6 months had passed since that fateful night at the Jeju Communications Center. Commander Kim To-won stood on the roof of the Defense Ministry building in Seoul, watching through military binoculars as the sky above the city began to darken. It was midday, but enormous shadows were sliding across the sun like a solar eclipse that would never end. The alien ships were nothing like the sleek vessels humans had imagined in their science fiction movies. These were massive, organic-looking structures that seemed to breathe and pulse with their own inner light. Each ship was the size of a small city with curved surfaces that gleamed like wet bone under the filtered sunlight. There were dozens of them floating silently in Earth's orbit like sleeping giants. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," reported Lieutenant Park Jin-woo, his voice tight with nervous energy. "It's coming from the lead ship. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." One lowered his binoculars and hurried back inside the command center. The main screen was filled with the image of something that made his skin crawl. The alien was tall and thin, standing at least 8 feet high, with a body that seemed to be made of living crystal. Its face was angular and sharp, with eyes that glowed like blue stars. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "People of Earth," the alien began, its words perfectly clear despite the strange musical quality of its voice. "I am first voice of the Kethver Empire. We have received your surrender transmission and traveled far to accept your capitulation. We welcome you into our protection." The words hit the command center like a physical blow. Surrender, capitulation. These were not the words of grateful beings who had come to receive help. These were the words of conquerors. Ambassador Choi Haijin, who had been rushed to the command center when the ships first appeared, stepped forward to the communication console. Her face was pale but determined. "First voice, there has been a serious misunderstanding. We sent no surrender. We offered help to what we believed was a distress call." The crystalline being's form shimmered and changed color, shifting from blue to a confused purple. "Your species transmitted coordinates in response to our dominance proclamation. This is the universal signal of submission across all known civilizations. You have offered yourselves as our vassal state." Dr. Park So-young, who had been brought in as part of the emergency first contact team, felt her heart sink as she realized the horrible truth. She pulled up the original transmission on her tablet, studying it with new eyes. "Oh no," she whispered. "We completely misunderstood. The alien transmission they had received 6 months ago was not a cry for help at all. It was a demand for surrender, sent to Earth just as it had been sent to hundreds of other worlds across the galaxy. Every other species had properly understood the message and submitted immediately. Only humanity had been foolish enough to respond with an offer of aid." We misunderstood your message," Haijin explained desperately. "In our culture, when someone asks for help, we offer assistance. We didn't surrender. We tried to help you." First Voice's crystalline features seemed to ripple with confusion. The alien tilted its head, studying the humans through the communication link. "Help. You would aid those who proclaim dominance over you. This concept has no translation in our language systems." The Kethver leader paused, its form cycling through several different colors as it processed this information. "Your species' response pattern does not match any known civilization in our records. Are you claiming you misunderstood a standard dominance proclamation?" "Yes," Haijin said firmly. "We thought you were dying and needed our help. We wanted to save you." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, First Voice spoke again, its tone now carrying what sounded like pity. "Your species is clearly primitive and confused. This explains your unusual response. Do not fear. The Kethver are merciful conquerors. We will guide you properly." Within hours, the aliens began what they called protection protocols. Smaller ships descended from the massive vessels, establishing monitoring stations above. Every major city on Earth, the Kethver announced that they would require regular tribute, of Earth's resources to maintain their protection. They spoke of humanity as if they were wayward children who needed careful guidance. To the Kethver, this was mercy. They had encountered thousands of species across the galaxy, and all had properly submitted when faced with their dominance proclamation. They were being incredibly generous by accepting Earth's confused response as a valid surrender to humanity. It was the beginning of an occupation. President Han Dong-soo called an emergency session of the United Nations. Military leaders around the world watched helplessly as the alien ships positioned themselves in perfect formation above Earth's major population centers. Any attempt to resist would result in the destruction of entire cities. I genuinely believe we surrendered, Hai-Jin reported to the assembled world leaders. In their minds, they're being kind by accepting our submission, despite our obvious confusion about proper protocol. General Yang Genesio slammed his fist on the table. Kind? They're demanding tribute and treating us like conquered subjects. Because that's what they think we are, Soyoung replied quietly. We responded to their threat with kindness, and they literally cannot understand what that means. The misunderstanding that had begun with humanity's desire to help was now threatening to destroy everything they held dear. Earth had become a vassal state in an alien empire, all because they had tried to be good neighbors to the universe. The underground bunker beneath Seoul had become the unofficial headquarters of Earth's resistance movement. President Han Dong-soo sat at the head of a metal table, surrounded by military officers and diplomats who all looked like they had not slept in weeks. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows on their tired faces as they discussed their impossible situation. 3 months had passed since the Kethver established their protection over Earth. The alien overseers had set up massive collection points in every major city, demanding regular shipments of precious metals, rare earth elements, and advanced technology as tribute. They called it payment for their generous protection services. The mining operations are destroying our environment, reported Dr. Kim Jae-sung, the head of Earth's Environmental Protection Agency. They're strip mining entire mountains in South America and Africa. At this rate, we'll have nothing left within 5 years. General Yang Geneseo paced back and forth behind his chair, his military uniform wrinkled and stained with sweat. People are getting angry. There were riots in Tokyo yesterday. Protesters want us to fight back. But what can we do against ships that size? Ambassador Choi Hae-jin rubbed her temples, trying to ease the headache that had been building for days. Every time I try to explain the misunderstanding to First Voice, it just makes things worse. They think we're being deliberately difficult. Through the bunker's communication system, the familiar sound of crystalline chimes announced another message from their alien overseers. First Voice's ethereal form appeared on the main screen, its blue glow casting strange shadows on the bunker walls. Humans of Earth, the alien began, its musical voice carrying a note of confusion and growing irritation. Your species continues to resist our protection protocols. This defiance was not anticipated based on your surrender transmission. Are you attempting to void your submission covenant? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone in the bunker knew what happened to species that tried to break their surrender agreements with the Kethver. The historical records were clear: complete annihilation of the entire planet. No. First Voice Hae-jin responded carefully. We are not trying to void anything. We are simply trying to explain that there was a misunderstanding in our original communication. The alien's form flickered and changed to a deep red color. Misunderstanding is not possible. The dominance proclamation was transmitted in standard galactic protocol. All civilized species understand this format. Your coordinates response was clear acceptance of vassal status. Dr. Park So-young had been studying the Kethver language and culture for months, trying to find some way to bridge the gap between their species. She stood up slowly, her voice shaking as she spoke. First Voice. In our culture, when someone says they need help, we offer assistance. We did not understand that your message was a demand for surrender. Help. First Voice's form pulsed with confusion. You would aid those who demonstrate superior power over you. This concept cannot be processed by our translation systems. Yes, So-young said firmly. That is what we tried to do. We wanted to help you. The alien was quiet for a long moment, its crystalline body cycling through different colors as it processed this information. Finally, it spoke again, its voice carrying what sounded like growing suspicion. Your species claims to offer aid to those who threaten you. This behavior pattern is not recorded in any known civilization database. Such actions suggest either primitive confusion or deliberate deception. The accusation of deception was the last thing the humans needed to hear. Around the galaxy, the HFY had built their empire on the absolute trust that surrender meant surrender. Species that tried to trick them or break their agreements faced complete destruction. We are not deceiving you, President Han insisted. We genuinely wanted to help what we thought was a dying civilization. Dying. First Voice's form turned a dangerous shade of orange. But the HFY Empire spans 1,000 star systems. We are the dominant force in this galaxy. To suggest we are dying is an insult of the highest order. The situation was spiraling out of control. Every attempt to explain humanity's actions only made the HFY more suspicious and angry. They could not understand why a conquered species would continue to claim they had offered help instead of properly surrendering. Military tensions escalated rapidly. The HFY began powering up weapons systems on their massive ships, interpreting humanity's explanations as attempts to break their surrender covenant. At the same time, Earth's combined military forces quietly moved into defensive positions. Knowing that any direct confrontation would be suicide but unable to simply stand by and watch their world be destroyed. They think we're trying to trick them, He-Jin whispered to the assembled leaders. Every time we try to explain our good intentions, they become more convinced that we're planning some kind of betrayal. And we think they're unreasonable conquerors, Yang replied grimly, when all they believe they're doing is being merciful to a species that voluntarily surrendered. The misunderstanding that had begun with humanity's compassionate response to what they thought was a cry for help was now threatening to end in the complete annihilation of both species. The HFY prepared for what they saw as inevitable betrayal by ungrateful vassals, while humanity prepared for what they saw as the final assault by merciless conquerors. Neither side understood that they were both trapped in a prison built from the fundamental differences in how their species viewed the universe. Dr. Kim Jae-sung had not left the xenolinguistics laboratory in 3 days. Empty coffee cups and food containers cluttered his desk as he stared at screen after screen of HFY communication data. His eyes were red and bloodshot, but he could not stop working. Somewhere in these alien transmissions was the key to preventing a war that would destroy both species. The breakthrough came at 4:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. When Jae-sung was so tired he could barely think straight, he had been analyzing the social patterns in HFY communications when he noticed something strange about their gift-giving behavior. In thousands of recorded conversations, not once did a HFY give something to another being without receiving something bigger in return. Hyjin, he called out weakly to Ambassador Choi Hyjin, who had been sleeping on a couch in the corner of the lab. You need to see this. Hyjin struggled to wake up, her diplomatic suit wrinkled, and her hair a mess. She had been living in the research facility for weeks, desperately searching for a solution to their impossible situation. What is it, Jae-sung? Did you find something? Look at this, he said, pointing to a complex chart on his computer screen. I've been studying their empire's communication records. Every single species they've conquered received the same dominance proclamation we did. Every single one responded with immediate submission. Hyjin rubbed her eyes and moved closer to the screen. What's your point? We're the first species in their empire's history to respond to a threat with an offer of help. They literally cannot process the concept of altruism between strangers. Look at their neural scan data. Jae-sung pulled up brain imaging scans that the HFY had provided as part of their cultural exchange program. The alien brain patterns showed clear areas of activity when discussing hierarchy, dominance, and submission. But when human concepts of kindness and selfless help were introduced, entire sections of their brains simply went dark. Their brains are structured differently than ours, Jae-sung explained, his voice growing excited despite his exhaustion. They have physical neural pathways dedicated to understanding power relationships. but they have no equivalent pathways for processing genuine altruism. You're saying they can't understand kindness? Shun asked, staring at the brain scans. In amazement, I'm saying they can't understand sacrifice for someone who hasn't earned it through dominance. In their world, you only help those above you in the hierarchy, and only because you're forced to. The concept of helping a stranger who has done nothing for you is literally impossible for them to process. The revelation hit Hyjin like a physical blow. Humanity's greatest weakness, their naive willingness to help strangers, was so alien to the Kethfer that it broke their understanding of how the universe worked. No wonder they thought humans were lying or confused when they claimed to have offered help. There's something else, Jae-Soon continued, pulling up another file. Remember that original transmission that started all this? I've been analyzing it more carefully. Part of it was actually genuine. He played back the original alien message, this time with enhanced translation algorithms. Mixed in with the standard dominance proclamation were fragments of what appeared to be a real distress call, references to atmospheric poisoning ecosystem, collapse and population decline on their homeworld. Their planet is actually dying, Jae-Soon said quietly. The dominance proclamation was standard procedure, but there was a real emergency signal buried underneath it. They were genuinely calling for help, even while demanding surrender. Hyjin felt her heart racing as the full implications became clear. So when we offered to help, we were responding to the part of their message that was actually true. Exactly. But they couldn't understand why we would help without being conquered first. In their minds, only slaves help their masters. The two humans stared at each other as the pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place. The Kethfer were not evil conquerors who enjoyed crushing other species. They were simply beings who had evolved in a universe where kindness only existed within strict hierarchies. The concept of voluntary cooperation between equals was as foreign to them as breathing underwater was to humans. We need to contact First Voice, Hyjin said, moving toward the communication console. We need to show them what we really are. Wait, Jae-Soon said, grabbing her arm. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. We need to demonstrate human nature in a way they can actually understand. What do you mean? We need to help them, Jae-Sung said simply. Not because they're our masters, not because they conquered us, but because it's the right thing to do. We need to show them that humans will sacrifice for others even when those others threaten them. The plan they developed was insane and dangerous. They would propose a humanitarian mission to the Kethfer homeworld, offering to help solve their environmental crisis despite the ongoing occupation of Earth. It was a gamble that could either save both species or provide the Kethfer with the perfect opportunity to eliminate humanity entirely. But as Hyjin looked at the brain scan showing the aliens' inability to process human kindness, she realized it was their only hope. The Kethfer could not understand mercy through words or explanations. It could only understand it through actions. So incomprehensible that it would force them to rebuild their entire understanding of what was possible in the universe. The massive transport ship carrying Earth's humanitarian mission moved slowly through the void of space toward the Kethfer homeworld. Commander Lee Minho, the man whose fateful decision had started this entire crisis, stood at the observation deck, watching the alien planet grow larger through the reinforced windows. Behind him, thousands of human volunteers prepared medical equipment, atmospheric processors, and environmental restoration tools. The Kethfer homeworld was a heartbreaking sight. What had once been a beautiful crystal planet was now covered in toxic clouds that swirled like poisonous storms. The atmosphere glowed with an unhealthy green light from centuries of industrial pollution. Even from space, Minho could see the dead zones where nothing could survive anymore. You sure about this? Asked Dr. Park So-young, joining him at the window. She wore a bulky environmental suit designed to protect her from the deadly atmosphere they were about to enter. We're risking everything on the hope that they'll understand what we're trying to do. Minho nodded grimly. We have to try. If we can't make them understand through words, maybe we can show them through our actions. The mission was unprecedented in human history. Despite living under alien occupation, millions of humans had volunteered to help save the homeworld of their supposed conquerors. They brought with them the most advanced environmental restoration technology Earth had ever developed. along with medical supplies and scientific expertise that could potentially reverse centuries of ecological damage. The Kethver watched, in complete confusion, as the human ships landed on their dying world. First Voice met them at the landing site, its crystalline form flickering with colors that indicated deep bewilderment. The alien leader had never seen anything like this in thousands of years of galactic conquest. "Why are you here?" its First Voice asked, its musical voice carrying notes of suspicion and fear. "Your species gains nothing from this sacrifice. We still occupy your world. We still demand tribute from your people." Saul Young stepped forward, her voice muffled by the breathing apparatus in her environmental suit. "Because you're suffering. That's enough reason for us." It's the simple statement hit First Voice like a physical blow. Its form cycled through dozens of colors as it tried to process the concept. In the Kethver's understanding of the universe, beings only helped others for three reasons: because they were forced to, because they hoped to gain something, or because they feared punishment. The idea that someone would sacrifice for strangers simply because those strangers were in pain was completely impossible. Human teams spread across the dying planet, working alongside confused Kethver scientists to implement atmospheric cleaning protocols. Dr. Kim Jae-sung worked 18-hour days in the toxic environment, teaching the aliens terraforming techniques that Earth had developed during its own environmental crises. The crystalline beings watched in amazement as humans risked their lives to save a world they had never seen for people who had threatened to destroy them. "I don't understand," First Voice said to So Young as they worked together in a processing plant deep underground. "Your species could have used this crisis to negotiate better terms for your surrender. You could have demanded we reduce our tribute requirements or remove our monitoring stations from your world." "We didn't think about that," So Young replied honestly, adjusting the atmospheric filters with practiced efficiency. "We just saw that you needed help." The concept began to spread throughout the Kethver Empire like a virus. News of humanity's actions reached every conquered world, every military outpost, every corner of their vast galactic civilization. Species that had been enslaved for centuries watched in wonder as their fellow vassals risked everything to save the homeworld of their oppressors. The breakthrough came when the atmospheric restoration reached a critical success point. First time in 200 years, natural sunlight broke through the toxic clouds above the Kethver capital city. The alien population gathered in the streets, their crystalline forms glowing with joy as they experienced clean air and real light. First Voice stood beside Minho on the observation platform of the main processing plant, watching its people celebrate in the streets below. "Your species has done something we thought impossible," it said, its voice filled with wonder. "You have voluntarily sacrificed for the benefit of others who have shown you nothing but hostility." "That's what we tried to tell you from the beginning," Minho replied quietly. "We wanted to help you." The announcement came 3 days later, broadcast simultaneously to every world in the Kethver Empire. First Voice's image appeared on communication screens across the galaxy, its form glowing with colors that indicated a fundamental change in understanding. 8. The Kethver Empire hereby declares Earth the first protected ally in our galactic confederation. First Voice announced, "Your species has demonstrated something we believed impossible: voluntary sacrifice for the benefit of others. You have shown us that there are ways of existing in the universe that we had never imagined." The occupation of Earth ended immediately. The tribute demands stopped. The monitoring stations were removed. But more than that, the relationship between the two species was completely transformed. Earth became a symbol throughout the galaxy of something unprecedented, a species so strange, so impossibly compassionate, that they would help even those who threatened them. Commander Lee Minho stood once again in the Jeju Communications Center, but this time he was not alone. A small Kethver observer worked beside him, learning human communication protocols and marveling at the concept of offering help to strangers. The misunderstanding that had nearly destroyed both species had instead revealed something beautiful: that kindness, even when misunderstood, could change the universe.